So you met Aaron in kindergarten, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you were in the same grade in the school, I assume?
We didn't go to the same school. Like we went to school at the same time, yeah.
Okay, so you were in the same grade, but you didn't go to the same school.
Correct.
All right. So how is it that you remained friends then? You never went to school together?
We started going to school together in 6th grade.
Okay, so
all the way up through high school.
Okay, so the same time that Jamin did then.
Yes.
Okay, so but you had been friends. How close were you to Aaron before the 6th grade?
Pretty close. So we played football, baseball, and we wrestled.
All right, and so the 6th grade comes, and I assume that your experience with Aaron in that 6th, 7th, 8th grade period was similar to Jamin's. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yes, it is.
How would you describe it?
Really, whenever I would talk to Aaron, it was more sports related.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he brought up Jerry Sandusky, but it wasn't anything abnormal that anybody else would bring up. You know what I mean? It was more of just talking about him and how good of a defensive coordinator he was, rather than anything else. Now,
Jerry had been retired for quite a few years at that point. Was Aaron a big Penn State fan at that time?
That I can't remember.
I'm wondering. See, one of my theories on this is that Aaron never had any memory of Jerry as a defensive coordinator, and so I'm just wondering how much influence that really had on him. I mean, he really only knew him as an old guy with a charity, I mean, because
right.
Anyway, but so the point is that you were aware that he was friends with Jerry Sandusky, but it wasn't a huge part of his life, you don't think, or how big a part of his life was it at that time?
I don't think it was that big of a part of his life quite yet at that time.
Okay, now how would you describe Aaron as a personality in that time period, 6th, 7th, 8th grade?
Timid. He was definitely timid. And then once he opened up and started understanding the process of things, he just like Jamin said, he would open up and he wouldn't be afraid to tell anybody what he thought. It didn't matter really who it was, he would tell you how he thought.
Right. I mean, not a guy who was going to be taken advantage of.
Exactly, right.
And a guy who prided himself on being physically strong and being able to defend himself, right?
Right. I know the biggest reason why he would do that was he made himself sound bigger and feel bigger was because he was always a small guy. Right. So I think a lot of it was a lot of egotistical as well, and he didn't want his ego to get into the way of anything. Because like I said, he was stellar at a lot of sports.
But he was tough. I mean, right? He was small, but he was kind of that tough guy kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
And then now what about in the realm of sexual awareness? Did you agree with Jamin's take on Aaron in that realm?
Yeah, I actually do. He was very open about his sexuality. He wasn't afraid to hide it from anybody. And he definitely would have said something. I know for a fact he definitely would have said something if something would have happened to him. Because my experiences with Aaron, if something happened, he, ran and told his mom. And
so, in other words, if someone took advantage of him in some other way, he would always run and tell his mom?
Yes.
Can you remember?
If someone picked on him, he ran and would tell his mom about it.
And can you remember a specific example of this? by any chance?
That I can't necessarily.
Think about it. If you do overnight, it's always good to have an example.
Right.
Stories are great. Like I remember this one time in 7th grade when some kid picked on Aaron and he went straight home to mom and something like that. I mean, I'm not telling you to make. I don't want you to make it up. But if you happen to remember something like that, that would be helpful. Now, during this 6th, 7th, and 8th grade time period, would you consider yourself to be like his best friend, or close there, or what? Give me a sense of.
I wouldn't say someone's best friend. I'd say a good friend, that's someone who he knew he could turn to.
So you were in his closest circle of friends.
Right.
Okay. And go back to the sex thing, just so I know. Did you is your recollection of when he said he lost his virginity? Well, what is your recollection of when he says he lost his virginity? It
was either 11 or 12 is when he said.
Okay. You remember that well?
Yeah. It was between 11 and 12 is when he said it.
Now, just to be clear, did he say it when he was 11 or 12, or did he say that in retrospect it was 11 or 12?
He said, I can't remember the exact age, but I know he said he lost it when he was like a lot younger.
Okay, but so in other words, it doesn't need to be exact. But it sounds like what you're telling me is maybe at the age of 14 he said, yeah, I lost my virginity at the age of 11 or 12. Is that true or no? Or was it closer to the actual date?
Yeah. Like it was about actually when he told me it was our junior year. And we were walking around town, and he said that again. He was talking about all his sexual experiences that he's had, and how at a very young age that he had lost his virginity. And when Jamin said 12, it sounded real familiar of him saying 12.
Okay, but he didn't claim that until he was a junior in high school.
Right, to me.
Okay. Now, prior to being a junior in high school, did he ever talk to sex? I mean, I'm assuming he must have. Did he ever talk to you about sex?
Yeah, a lot.
He talked about sex a lot. And so, do you have any recollection of when he started talking about having had sex with girls? About what age or what grade?
It was about the summer of after 8th grade, going into high school.
That he started talking about having sex with girls.
Yes.
Okay. So that would have been like 2009-ish, something like that, right?
Yeah, about 2008.
2008. Okay. Now, but did you get the impression that he had just started having sex with girls at that time, or that he had some experience and was just now talking about it?
The way he was talking about it, like the way he was explaining things, it sounded like he's been having it for a while. And
were you experienced with sex at that time, or were you like, holy cow, this guy's way ahead of me?
I thought, holy cow, this guy's way ahead of me.
Yeah. Did you believe him?
Yeah, I did. Reason being, he was one of my friends at the time, my closer friends at the time, and if you have a real good friend, you're going to trust that person, until they give you a reason not to trust them. Right.
Now, did he ever tell you the 300 girls in his book story that he did to Jamin? Did he ever tell you that?
Trying to remember if he did.
Well, how about in general terms, and if you remember tomorrow, great. If not, don't worry about it. In general terms, though, would you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being as hyper-sexed as anybody you've ever met, where would you put Aaron on the level of sexual interest and talk and that kind of stuff?
Between a 9.5 and 10.
9.5 and 10. So he's right at the top. And has been since about when?
About 10th grade.
So see, that seems later to me than, I mean, you've already described him as having talked about having had sex in the 8th grade.
Yeah, he didn't, like, it was, like, he would talk about it, but it wasn't as common.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like.
Now, what about in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade eras though? Was he still Was he, joking about sex? Did he indicate knowledge of sex? What sex was? That kind of thing.
He would like joke about it. Well, what I thought was joking at the time, because I didn't know any better. And then as like we got older and things, like I started realizing, hey, this guy wasn't lying, back then,
mm-hmm.
Or anything.
Well, here's why it's important. I think you know this. I mean, the perception that was created by the prosecution and in Aaron's book is that when he was in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, he was this little, poor, innocent, naive kid that, didn't really know about sex and couldn't defend himself.
He definitely knew about sex, that's for sure. He was poor, and he acted innocent a lot. Because he grew up more like on the lower class.
I'm not talking about, by the way, I didn't mean economically poor. I meant like, the idea that he couldn't take care of himself, type of deal. I mean, do you agree with that perception, or or was that a misperception of Aaron?
That was like in the middle. Like he would come to school wearing the same clothes and like.
Again, I'm not talking about economics. I'm talking about, all I'm interested in is was he the person that they portrayed him to be at that time? In other words, have you read or heard or seen the portrayals of Aaron in that 6th, 7th, and 8th grade period of time when he was allegedly molested? They tried. You have not?
No. Okay.
See, so you haven't read his book either, have you?
I read like half and 3/4 of it.
What did you think of the book?
Looked like it was framed, like, if that makes sense.
No, what do you mean?
Like it was like staged, like, hey, say this, and say that.
What gave you that impression?
Because like I like just knowing Aaron and knowing his mom, like some of the things that they quote unquote said definitely isn't like nothing compared to like what would be said by those two.
In other words, so was you while you were reading the book, you were like, wait a minute, this is not the Aaron and Dawn I know.
Right.
Can you remember anything specifically?
Oh man.
I need you to think tonight about just find one example from the book that you remember going, wait a minute, that's not right. Okay?
Okay.
Can you do that?
I can, yes.
All right. Do you still have the book?
I do, yes.
You might. And go ahead.
The kid who Damon was saying that him, Aaron, and another friend were playing PlayStation, and he asked him to sign his book.
Right.
If I remember correctly, that was me.
Ah, okay.
That had his book. Aaron actually signed it too.
Now, how did you find out? I mean, did you know? Well, why don't we just go through that right now then? Okay, so you're friends with Aaron all this time through high school, and I'm assuming. Well, tell me the first time you had any idea that Aaron was making an allegation against Jerry Sandusky.
Whenever his name came out in the media.
Okay, so
whenever it was finally exposed.
When he was arrested.
Yes.
And when Joe Paterno got fired.
Yep.
Now, how did you find out that Aaron was involved in that?
There was stuff going around on Facebook about it, and then there was small rumors about it, like, hey, this, supposedly it was Aaron that was saying this stuff, and supposedly Aaron came out with it.
Now so you didn't hear it from him. You heard it on Facebook.
Right.
And did you believe it?
I was caught off guard, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to believe it, but then at the same time I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it was true.
Why?
Because if it was true, I know Aaron would have came out with it a lot sooner than when he did.
Right.
And it wouldn't take him so long to come out with it.
Right. And so you had suspicions right from the beginning.
Right.
Now, when I'm assuming, are you a big Penn State fan at all, or do you care about Penn?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So when this happened, I'm assuming you thought Jerry Sandusky must be guilty as hell, right? Or no?
I didn't think he was at all. I was like, he's like one of the most iconic guys other than Joe Paterno at Penn State.
Right.
He was the other living legend at Penn State as the defensive coordinator, having the top-rated defense in the nation for years on years on years.
Right.
So I never thought of it. And then when he would go to Central Mountain and help out with the defensive coordinating.
So did you ever meet him at Central Mountain?
I have, yes.
And did you like him?
It was an experience, I can tell you that, because it was one of those things that was like, for me, I was like meeting someone like, quote unquote, like famous.
Right.
So it was.
You didn't play football there, did you?
Not in high school.
So you're thinking this can't be right. I've met Jerry. He's a famous guy, an icon. I've got my suspicions about Aaron. Now let me be clear here, though. At this time, obviously, there's the major issue of why wouldn't Aaron say anything about this, which is huge.
Right.
Which is huge. That's huge. To me, it's the number one issue in the whole case. But as far as Aaron's overall trustworthiness, some people I know said he's an exaggerator. Other people say he's a kind of a drama guy or drama queen. Some people say he just lies. I've had girls tell me he lies all the time.
Right.
How would you describe his truthfulness?
It's wishy-washy. There's times where he'd over-exaggerate, like he'd tell the truth, but then at the same time he'd over-exaggerate to make himself look better, or to make the situation look better. There'd be times that he would lie, and I find out, I'd catch him in a lie, and I call his bluff. Then there was times where he would be telling the truth about something. So it was wishy-washy.
So you knew him to be capable of lying.
Yes.
Okay. And so did that play into why you weren't convinced that Sandusky was guilty?
Yeah, that gave me some of the suspicions, I guess.
Okay. All right. So then the trial happens. Did you follow the trial closely?
I tried to follow it as close as I could.
Did you talk to Aaron about this at all, or was this like a forbidden subject matter?
I talked to him about it. I was like, hey, dude, what's going on? And then at that time, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna believe him. So I started believing Aaron. I was like, okay, dude, hey, if there's anything you need to talk about, let me know. I'm here for you. I know what you're going through, this, that, and the other. And he's like, all right, hey, thank you, dude. No problem, and whatnot. And since I'd ask him how he's doing and everything, and
But he
well,
never.
He never talked to me about it.
He never told you any details, did he?
No.
Now, by the way, did he know that you were a sex abuse victim?
Not that I can remember. I didn't tell him until after I found out, like, after this whole thing came out.
Okay, so tell me about that then. So after this whole thing comes out, you tell him you're an abuse victim.
Right.
Do you remember when you did that? Was that before the trial, after the trial, before his book, after the book? When was that?
It was like... It was after the trial, but before his book came out.
Okay. And why did you decide to do that?
Because, like, I know, people, because I've realized, it's easier to get through something if you know you're not alone.
Right.
And if somebody else is going through the same thing or has gone through the same thing that you're going through,
right,
then it's easier to get through it.
And so how did he react when you told him?
He was shocked.
And then, was there any other reaction?
No, he was shocked, and it was more shocked than surprised look on his face, wow, I didn't know that. And I was like, yeah. So, if you need anything, let me know.
And what was his response to that?
He said that he will let me know if he needs anything. He's like, I will. And he said, thank you. And I was like, hey, dude, I'm here for you. He's like, yeah, I know. And that was that.
Now, how did you respond to that? Was that what you expected, or would you have expected him to start to open up to you and go, "Oh my God, isn't it horrible? This is, let me tell you what."
Right, I was expecting him to open up. I wasn't expecting him just to say, "Okay, I got it," type deal. And even after that, after that conversation, I was expecting, as things went on and whatnot, before they actually finally had the verdict, I was expecting them to be telling me, opening up and talking to me about it.
But then
never did.
Never did. Do you find that significant?
I found it kind of odd.
But I mean, what I'm taking from your story, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if he was really abused, he would have reacted differently to you, right? I mean, he would have.
Right.
I mean, and let's put it the other way. If he wasn't abused, that to me how he would react to somebody like you. A friend tells him, by the way, dude, I was molested when I was, how old were you? 8 years old, you said?
7.
7 years old. I was molested by a man when I was 7. If he's not abused, right? If Jerry never abused him, he's not going to want to talk about that at all. Right,
because he's going to feel uncomfortable about it.
Well, because also somebody knows what it's really like, and they're going to be able to figure out this didn't happen to me. Plus you have no experiences to share. You follow me?
Right, I agree.
I mean, so that to me might be the most significant thing you've told me so far, is that a friend of his says, I'm an abuse victim and I'm here for you, and he doesn't say anything at all except, hey, thanks, I'll talk to you later, basically. I mean, is that fair? I mean,
yeah, it is.
Okay. Just so I understand, and we don't need to get into it deeply, but I will mention it, or I'll let you mention it. What was the nature of the relationship you had with the person who abused you?
It was a relative.
Do you think your personality type was different back then than Aaron's personality type?
Yeah.
So in other words,
yeah, he was more of that outgoing, gung ho, if something's bothering me, I'm going to tell you. And me, I was one of those guys that, I'd tell you if you would push it, but if you didn't push it or ask me, I wasn't going to tell you.
Okay. So when we talk about this tomorrow, that's a good answer. I mean, but I think the major thing though is that this was somebody that this was when you were 7 years old is when it started, which is much different.
Right.
Now, can you tell me, and we don't need to get into this necessarily in the interview, but I'm trying to get some understanding. So, what was the power that person had over you? I mean, you say a family member was, I mean, I don't know if you want to tell me more about the nature. I mean, there's obviously it's either brother or uncle or a dad, I'm guessing. So, I mean, what was it that, what was the source of the power?
Well, I mean, it was my grandfather, and I lived with him.
Okay.
So he was the one taking me to all my sporting events, doing everything he possibly could, and he was, like, bribing me to stay with him.
Okay.
Stay with my grandparents.
He was bribing you?
Yes.
With what?
It was either, like, a four-wheeler, three-wheeler, a new baseball bat, new cleats, new wrestling shoes, anything.
Okay. Now, some people claim that that's what Jerry was doing. Now, it's my belief that the gifts that Jerry gave Aaron were much exaggerated for the purposes of trying to portray the idea that Jerry was paying off Aaron when he really wasn't. Like, for instance, there were some golf clubs that I'm told were used golf clubs and nothing special. There was a computer, which sounds really great, except it was a used computer that was about to be thrown out. Bought him some church clothes, $20 for a birthday card, that kind of stuff. Did you get any sense that Jerry was trying to buy Aaron off while you were friends with Aaron?
No, honestly, I wouldn't even have known. Because like James said, he came in and he was, the same guy.
You mean Aaron was?
Yeah, and...
So you saw no change in personality?
No.
Now, did your personality change when you were being abused?
Mine did, yes.
Now, did anybody, when you were being abused, did anybody notice the change? And did anyone, in retrospect, go, oh my God, this was obvious what was happening?
The biggest thing with me was that my anger changed. I wasn't really angry, and then, it kind of, happened, overnight. And I started getting, real angry at school, and people started noticing that I was getting more angry and more short.
Okay. And you never saw that with Aaron?
No.
Okay. And so is it fair to say that having gone through it and knowing what it does to you, that you knew what the signs would be and you didn't see those signs in Aaron?
Right. I mean, unless he's really good at hiding his feelings, which most of the time, if he was upset and you could see it, and if he was mad, he was mad, and you could see it.
Right, so that's not his personality type to be hiding things.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, that's the way we'll handle it when we do the interview, okay? We'll just talk about, just follow along with me, and we'll be fine. Okay, so you tell me you're an abuse victim, and and he doesn't really respond very much, doesn't say anything. The book comes out, you read the book, and you don't even finish the book. Why didn't you finish the book?
I just didn't find any more interest in it.
And why was it?
I lost interest in it because knowing what you go through compared to what was being portrayed that Aaron was, and knowing that it was completely different, it wasn't really making me so happy, I guess you could say.
So you were getting angry at Aaron because you didn't believe the story anymore.
Right.
See, I
don't want to say so much at Aaron, it was more towards the interviewer for the book.
Mike Gillum, the therapist?
Yeah.
Why did you have anger towards him?
Because like I know with therapists, if they want you to do something, they'll be able to get you to do or say something.
All right, now this is an interesting part of this whole equation, because all right, so tell me what you think happened there, because it sounds to me like you're saying you think Gillum manipulated Aaron.
I think so, yes.
And why do you believe that?
Just because of Aaron really didn't when Aaron didn't really talk to me about what was going on. That right there would raise a flag. And then whenever the sign saying that he was acting certain ways around school and all that stuff, it's like, okay, how are you not going to talk to me about it, but yet someone who's went through it, someone who knows how you feel, compared to somebody who is your quote unquote therapist. Does that make sense?
Yeah. In other words, you were feeling like, Jesus, Aaron, what you're telling Mike Gillum all this, why didn't you talk to me about it?
Right.
Now, I don't know how much you remember, but to me, the best evidence to Aaron is not telling the truth is his book. And I mean that since you agree with that?
Yeah.
And why do you agree with it? Why do you believe that?
Because it's not, to me, it doesn't sound like anything Aaron would say, or his mom, really.
So it seemed inauthentic to you.
Right.
And see, to me, I didn't know them. I don't know them really now today, but what was startling to me was what the therapist wrote. The therapist wrote things that were ridiculous. I mean, I don't know how much you remember this, but the therapist was writing the Philadelphia Eagles were part of the Penn State cover-up. That Jerry Sandusky manufactured Aaron's car accident. Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
That Jerry Sandusky had the district attorney murdered in 2005. When he disappeared, which had nothing to do with anything in this case.
And I remember that too.
Great Ray Griecar. I mean, did you read those things in the book?
I skimmed over them.
I mean, did you agree that those things were? That there were things in the book that were crazy?
Yes.
And so, to me, when I read the book, I'm like, holy cow, this is all bullcrap.
Right. To me, I think Gillum was helping Aaron win the settlement. That's what it seemed like to me. It was more of a shining star on Gillum's part.
Well,
because, if Aaron would win the settlement, then Gillum would get the fame and the popularity of I'm helping victim number one.
Well, that's he's definitely an attention whore. Gillum is. Now, what do you? Let me throw a theory past you. By the way, have you been to a therapist because of your issues?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what do you? There is a belief that some of these accusers of Sandusky were convinced by therapists that they were actually abused through something called repressed memory therapy. Are you familiar with this at all?
Yes. Tell
me how you're familiar with this.
We when I was in therapy, we would talk about it. And it's kind of if I remember correctly, it was one of those things if you tell yourself over and over and over again that something happened, and then you go and tell other people, sooner or later you're going to believe it yourself. And then when you believe it yourself, and that's what you know, that lie is to you the truth. So then you'll tell other people and tell them that, that lie over and over and over and over and over again until they believe it. Until it's pounded into their head, hey, okay, well, this has happened.
Do you think it's possible that Gillum convinced Aaron that he was abused when he really wasn't?
It's very well possible.
And why do you say that?
Aaron, it's weird because Aaron he can manipulate his way out of anything, but he could be very easily manipulated.
Well, here's my theory on what really happened here. Just for we probably won't get into this tomorrow, but just so you know, here's what I think happened. All right.
Okay.
I think that that Aaron was a hypersexed kid.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he was tired of hanging out with an old guy who bugged him about his grades that were starting to go down, because his grades were starting to go down at this time. I think that Jerry felt like he was starting to lose Aaron, and so he kind of put the foot on the accelerator and almost suffocated Aaron, because I think he really liked Aaron. Spent a lot of time with Aaron. So he's 14 years old, and let's say that Jerry and he are, who the hell knows what they're doing, working out, wrestling, whatever. I mean, they're physically close to each other. Jerry's touchy. Let's say Aaron starts to get like a partial erection or something, right?
Right.
And it freaks him out. Like, what the fuck is that?
Mm.
Right? And it's not about Jerry, it's about him. You follow me? Where he's like, holy fuck, man, I'm not a homosexual. Why am I getting, a chubby for, when you're, and when you're 14, you get a chubby, the wind blows the wrong way. So anyway, so it makes him uncomfortable, right? He doesn't like it, and it's bothering him. And so he doesn't want, and so one weekend he doesn't want to go out with Jerry because he wants to go with Theron Mock. Did you know Theron Mock at all?
Theron Mock.
He was one of the kids in the car accident. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you watch the interview with the neighbor yet? The interview that I just released with the neighbor.
Not the neighbor, not yet. No.
Okay, you should watch it. Okay, because this relates to my theory. So Aaron says, "Mom, I don't want to hang out with Jerry." Dawn says, "Screw that. I'm gonna go out drinking. You're going out with Jerry this weekend because I don't, got anything else to do with you." And they get in this big argument right in front of the neighbor. And finally, Aaron says, "Well, he makes me feel uncomfortable." And Dawn says, "What do you mean?" And they go back and forth. And finally, he says, "Well, he touches me." "Well, what do you mean?" "He touches me over my jeans. He makes me feel uncomfortable." And then they go inside. And then, like a half hour later, Dawn comes out, and the first thing she says to the neighbor is, "I'm going to own that motherfucker's house," which is an awfully weird first thing to say. If your son just said that she was abused, but okay, whatever. Well, but here's the thing. Now you could theorize that somehow they go inside and Aaron spills all the beans. He's been sucking my dick and all this, blah blah blah, and then all that would make sense. Except here's the problem. Aaron never says anything about sex to the school, to the caseworker, or to the police. And those are all in different settings, okay? He never says anything about sex to any of them. So why would he tell his mother? And by the way, he has said, now of course you can't trust any of this, but he has claimed I never told my mother what actually happened. That's what he said. I think he said it in the book, but I know he said it in interviews. All right, so
he was extremely close with his mom. I know that. He told his mom pretty much
everything, right?
Everything.
So anyway, here's what I think happens. So I think Aaron decides to play the "he makes me feel uncomfortable" card, which may have had some truth to it. Okay, there might have been some truth to it.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, whether it's my erection theory or whatever it is, Aaron felt uncomfortable. Dawn starts seeing this as an opportunity, and she sends him to the school and then to the therapist. The therapist also sees this as an opportunity and starts drawing out more and more of Aaron's story. The mom, Dawn, is thrilled with the way this is going because she's seeing dollar signs. Aaron wants to please Dawn, so he keeps giving more and more of the story. Do you follow me? So does that make sense to you based upon...
It does, yeah. It makes a lot of sense, yes.
So you can see that happening, where Aaron would get caught up in something where maybe there was a kernel of truth to it.
An over-exaggerated truth.
And then he starts to exaggerate it, and then a therapist gets involved and starts to take it down a totally different path, and his mom is tickled because she's seeing money. Do you follow me?
Yep. Yeah, because he wants to, he probably, because I know I used to do this, just say what the therapist wants to hear just to get done and out of that meeting. So the therapist was probably asking questions. Did Jerry do this to you? Did Jerry do that to you? Is this what made you feel uncomfortable? And I, might have said, would probably say yes. Just to get done and over with it.
Well, eventually he tells the therapist, I think he answered yes to, did he ever have oral sex with you? And Aaron says yes. Now, I don't know how much you know about Aaron's testimony. Do you know anything at all about Aaron's testimony in this case?
Not so much his testimony, no.
Well, what's interesting, and see, this is all part of the perfect storm. By the way, is it okay I keep talking? I mean, it's past your bedtime.
Yeah. You're good.
Okay, so anyway, this is all part of the perfect storm. See, even Aaron's friends don't know the details because, frankly, no one wanted to know the details of this story, and everyone figured Sandusky was guilty as hell. So what does it matter? So no one close to any, and by the way, this happened with all the victims. Most of the victims don't even know, the friends and family members of the victims don't even know that they're Sandusky victims, which is why they're able to, because I guarantee there are people around every one of these other victims that are just like you who would go, what? No way. But they don't even know. But anyway, here's where I'm going with this. So the perfect storm here is people don't know that when Aaron tried to testify, the reason why this investigation went so long is that the first two times Aaron tried to testify in the grand jury, he couldn't do it.
Right, I heard about that, and that was my question, if Jerry is so guilty, then why is this dragging out so long? Well,
it's because Aaron couldn't testify. The first time they put him on the stand, he couldn't tell the story at all. He started crying. And then the second time, the exact same thing happened. And then the third time, they wrote his testimony out for him. And he read it. Now, does that sound like Aaron to you, if he was abused?
No. No, he in the first hearing, he would have looked right over at Jerry and said, he did it to me.
Right. And then, by the way, when he finally testified at trial, which was his fourth chance, not to mention all sorts of other interviews, he says on the stand, I don't even want to be here.
I did hear about that.
I don't even want to be here. What the hell is that? Now, to me, see, I would like to think that Aaron is a good kid, and I'm actually starting to think that he probably is.
He honestly is a very... He does do a lot of help for people. I'm not going to lie to you about that. He's helped me out with a lot.
What I'm hoping is that after we do our interview, see, because Jamin is already trying to do this, my hope is that you guys, and I'm happy to help, I want Aaron to come forward and realize this wasn't his fault, that he got caught up in something bigger than himself. That's what happened here. that Gillum is largely to blame here. I mean, now I don't know if it'll work because he's got all this money now, but that's why I'm wondering whether or not he's been convinced that it really happened.
That, like I said, and Aaron was one of those guys who you could convince. You know, if you would say gold was written on the ceiling, he would look up and try to find it.
You mean you think he was easily manipulated?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he seems like I mean, I don't want to call him dumb. I mean, because he's not dumb in some ways, but in other ways he is.
Right.
Okay, so you and I had similar reactions to the book.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever talk to Aaron about the book once you read it?
I didn't directly say anything about the book. I was like, you know, I've been reading your book, and I know how you feel. And the only things that he could really say is, yeah, it sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sucks, doesn't it? So he never really, much like when you told him you were an abuse victim, when you talked to him about the book, he's not giving you anything, right?
Right.
Now, how has the relationship been since then?
I hung out with him a couple times since then, but not much.
And is this because, you know, at this time, are you pretty convinced he's not telling the truth?
Not at that time. The most recent time that I contacted him was about 2 months ago, and it was on Facebook. Just telling him, you know, hey, dude, like, I'm here for you. You know, it's pretty much the same thing I was saying before. You know, I'm here for you. You know, here's my number, type deal. You know, get a hold of me whenever you need to talk.
Okay.
And same response was, okay, thanks. I will.
And now, did he stop reaching out to you at a certain point? More, you know, in other words, do you think that he maybe suspected that you? I don't want to put words in your mouth. But it seems like once he finds out you're an abuse victim, that he kind of doesn't really put much into the relationship after that. Is that accurate or no?
That's what I was seeing, yes. Yeah.
So in looking back on it, you think it's possible that once he finds out you're an abuse victim, he kind of distanced himself a little bit. You make him feel uncomfortable.
Right.
And do you think that's consistent with a guy who? What would be the reason why that would make him uncomfortable?
Because it didn't happen to him.
Right.
And he wouldn't know how to be able to hold a conversation and be afraid that he's going to jump himself up.
Right. That's what you think happened?
Right.
So when did you become totally convinced that he's lying?
About a month and a half ago.
And what happened to cause that?
Just thinking, seeing more and more interviews and thinking about, you know, how Aaron was, and seeing everybody else's, like, perspective on it, and then sitting back and, like, analyzing it all myself and thinking, you know, that is true, or, you know, that isn't true, or this, that, or the other. And then going back and, like, because I saw the interview of his speech that he had at Central Mountain.
Right, which is written by Don.
Yep. Because, so, I mean, just thinking about all of that and seeing his Facebook post, and it feels like, you know, just like Dana said, you know, he's under pressure, and he's just waiting for someone, like, to catch him slipping.
Now, have you been following my website during this time period?
No.
How did you learn about it?
I've been watching your interviews with other people. One of them was one of his ex-girlfriends.
So what? I mean, so you have been following my website then, if you've been seeing those interviews.
Right. I mean, it kind of. I mean, because it's Sierra Foster.
Yeah.
Like, because she would share the videos, and then other people would share the videos, and I'd be watching the videos, reading, the articles and whatnot.
Okay, so you've been familiar with the website, and then, so did watching Jamin's interview kind of put you over the edge? I mean, as far as, because it reinforced in your mind that your suspicions were true.
Yeah, because, I mean, being good friends with Jamin, it really, I don't know, it really hit home, I guess you can say.
Right.
And just thinking about everything, because, like, when you would ask Jamin questions, I was thinking, and I was like, this is what I would say to the same exact question. And sure enough, Jamin would say the same thing.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a good response. All right. So what would you say to Aaron now about this, if you could?
I'd just look him in the eye and be like, dude, listen, like, did man to man, did it or did it not happen? This will go no further than me and you. Just tell me, did it happen?
Yeah. See, to me, though, there's not much he can do to convince. I mean, I'd love to interview him and would be happy to. And if he convinced me, I'd be the first person to admit, okay, I was wrong. But it's going to be really tough because it's impossible for him to get around the basic reality that he didn't tell anybody, and he didn't act like an abuse victim. And his story changed constantly.
Yeah. And the thing that gets me is the fact that Dawn said numerous amount of times that she'd take a lie detector test for her and Aaron, and then neither one of them has.
Well, I know that she did. She said that to me. Are you referring to other times with a lie detector?
Yeah, like when she would tell you about it.
Okay, so her not taking a lie detector, or him not taking the lie detector test to you was significant.
Right, because of the fact that, I mean, you can lie on a lie detector test and still get through.
Right.
But it's pretty difficult because even if you are a pathological liar, you're still gonna have like the body sensing emotions that's gonna fight the.
Did you happen to see? Speaking of that, did you happen to see his Chris Cuomo interview on ABC?
Bits and pieces of it.
All right. See, to me, the key moment of that interview was near the end, and they played a clip of Jerry. Excuse me. They played a clip of Jerry at his sentencing hearing saying that Aaron is a liar, basically. I don't think he used Aaron's name, but he was referring to Aaron, right? And so Cuomo plays the clip for Aaron of Jerry saying this all started with a liar, right? And Cuomo says to Aaron, "How does that make you feel?" Do you remember this at all yet?
I remember him asking him how he felt, but I can't remember how Aaron said.
Okay. Well, what do you think the two, having been an abuse victim, right? If the same thing happened to you, and your grandfather was sentenced to life in prison, and you were now on national TV after having written a book about it, and you heard him say that you're a liar, what would your answer have been to that question?
Like, for me, it would be hard for me to answer because, like, it'd be my grandfather, and if you would say, this all started with a lie, I would break down.
So you would cry?
I would, yes.
Would you be angry?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'd be so mad that I'd break down, but at the same time I'd be so hurt that, about the whole entire situation, because, like, seeing the situation, seeing that, and saying that I'm a liar, when I would know it would happen, would bring back pretty much flashbacks.
Right. Well, there's no crying. There's no anger. Instead, Aaron says, fairly joyfully, it makes me feel like crap. Now, think about this.
Didn't he have like a little smirk on his face when he said it?
Yeah, I did have a little smirk on his face. Now, but he has a constant smirk on his face, so it's kind of hard to distinguish. But here's the thing. That doesn't make any sense. The only way that hearing Jerry call me a liar would make me feel like crap, in other words, feel bad about myself, is if Jerry's in jail because of me and nothing happened, right? I mean, because that's the only explanation for that answer. And the interesting part about the Q&A there was it was not something that Aaron could have anticipated being asked. And it was clearly a split-second reaction. It's not something he thought about. He said, oh, that makes me feel like crap. Well, okay, but that doesn't make any sense. To me, there's only two responses that make any sense there. Anger and emotion, or if you've gotten over it somehow, laughter, because this guy's, no one believes him. He's going to jail. You're on national TV and written a book. Go ahead, so ha, 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 I won, asshole. But instead, it made me feel like crap. You see what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah.
I mean that makes no sense at all. So anyway, by the way, just so I remember, or I haven't even asked you yet, what branch of the military are you in?
Army.
And what made you decide to go into the Army?
To get away from a bunch of negativity in Lock Haven.
What do you mean by that?
A lot of drugs, alcohol.
Okay. So how long?
Pretty much to start my life over.
How long you been in? How long you been in the Army?
3 years.
So basically, right after graduating from Central Mountain.
Yep, it was 2 months to the day after graduating from Central Mountain. I was in basic training.
Now, as far as Dawn is concerned, what is your general perception of her?
She cares for her son.
Mm-hmm.
She'll care for her kids as much as she could.
Mm-hmm.
And she would be the first one to stick up for her kids.
Mm-hmm.
In a heartbeat.
Right.
It didn't matter what it was, like she would stick up for them.
Okay. Now, do you think that she's somebody that would do almost anything for money?
I wouldn't necessarily say her, but I'd say more Aaron. So, I mean, it might be through Dawn for Aaron, if that makes sense.
In other words, you think Aaron's more money-focused than she is?
Yes.
Really? So you think Aaron was very money-focused?
Yes.
So he's very sex-focused and very money-focused.
Yes.
By the way, and I'm sure you saw this in the Post, but let's presume you're right about Dawn. She cares. I don't begrudge her. She cares about Aaron. I think she cares about Aaron. Mm-hmm. But if she cares about Aaron, which, okay, let's accept that's true. So if Aaron's story is true, she's the worst mother of all time, because she was feeding him to Jerry Sandusky for 3 years without having a clue.
Right.
So if that's the case, how does it make any sense for that mom, who cares about her kid, who therefore must have unbelievable amounts of guilt that this happened under her watch and because of her decision-making, she could go out drinking and partying, to then use Aaron's money to buy Porsches and Mercedes for herself? How does that make any sense?
It don't. 'Cause I know my mom felt a lot of guilt whenever it happened to me. Like, I would kick and scream, so I didn't have to go back to my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom would force me to go back. And then after it all came out, my mom found out about it. She was extremely guilty about it.
So you don't. So if you had gotten any money from your grandfather, right, in a settlement, let's pretend your grandfather was rich, right?
Mm-hmm.
And after this came out, you got a bunch of money. Do you think there's any chance in the world that your mom would have taken some of that money to go buy a Porsche and a Mercedes?
I know she definitely would have got it to go buy a new house and a new vehicle. Yes.
So you agree that would never happen, right?
Right. And if she didn't, I would have gave her the money anyways.
Well, okay, but the point, that's another interesting point. So why is Aaron giving her the money? Why is Aaron letting her do this if that's a really good point, actually. I hadn't thought about that. So if Aaron was really abused, he has to know that his mom let it happen, right? So
right.
So why is he giving her all this money? Right?
Yeah.
That doesn't make a lot of sense. But
no, it don't.
But I'll probably when we talk about this tomorrow, though, I just want you to make it clear that if forget about the fact that you wouldn't give your mother the money. Well, actually, that's a fair point. But the point is, your mom had so much guilt, she would never have bought luxury cars with money that came from your abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
Yeah. So to me, that's Dawn's reaction to all this is exactly the opposite of what it should be. When I say all this, I mean to me.
Right.
To me, if I'm Dawn, I don't want Aaron to have been abused. Why does she want Aaron to have been abused? Why? Even if he was abused, right?
Right.
Even if he was, she would still be a part of her that would want me to be right. Correct?
Yeah, and that would probably make her feel.
Like, let's say with your mom, right? If I went to your mom right now, and I said, guess what? I have evidence that your dad, was it her dad or was it?
Her dad.
Okay. I have evidence that your dad didn't really molest your son. Now, what would her reaction be?
She'd pretty much call you a liar.
She would call me a liar?
She'd call you a liar and she'd say, okay, let me see the proof.
She would at least want to know what it is, right?
Yeah.
She would hold out hope. She would hold out hope that I was right, right?
Mm-hmm.
She wouldn't want to believe that her dad molested her son. Who wants to believe that?
Yeah.
Right? Yet
that is true.
Yet Dawn wants Aaron to have been molested badly. That doesn't make any sense.
It really don't either.
Even if it happened, it makes no sense. And you make a very good point. It doesn't make any sense from Aaron's perspective either, because it's not like he's a 12-year-old kid who doesn't know any better and he's giving his mom the money. He's an adult now.
Exactly.
And so he knows that he was abused because of his mother, or his mother let it happen. So why is he giving her all this money?
Exactly.
Because I think that he and Dawn did a wink, wink, nod, nod. I don't think there was a conspiracy. I think they did a dance. You know what I'm saying? Where they each kind of knew where the other wanted them to go. And the further down the path it went, the more it got close to what they were looking for. And everyone started telling them how great they were and how brave they were and what heroes they were. And the media told them that Jerry was a pedophile. And I think it just spiraled.
That's what I think.
Okay. All
Like
right.
after, and that might even be after the fact that, you know, Aaron might have felt uncomfortable, went to the therapist, and the therapist putting it in there and said that he was abused, and his mom wanting it to happen, and then Aaron believing that it happened, and then you know, doing the little handshake and then going off.